Hello my dear friends, you're on the Military Summary channel and today we will discuss the situation in Ukraine on the 3rd of October. Today we have a lot of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first we're going to discuss the Oskol, Liman, Kupinsk, Kreminna bridgehead, this area. I think that now we should change the title of the front line because we used to call this area Kupinsk front line or Skol front line, or if we're talking about the south of this area, we were talking about the Liman bridgehead, Liman front line. Now this front line has totally different title, and I believe that we can call this front line Svatove-Kreminna front line by the name of the most important two towns in this area. Svatova, this logistics center, the heart of this area, the area that connects Starobelsk. This town used to be capital of Lugansk region that was the part of Ukraine, and Kreminna. This is the heart or the door, how you can call this town whatever you like. This is the key region to start offensive operation or counteroffensive operation in direction of Lysychansk, Severodonetsk agglomeration. So the front line, Svatove-Kreminna front line. The Russians, as you can see, the Western sources map has been updated. Now you see that the real front line goes along the border of LPR. This is the border of LPR, and we can say that starting from today, this is the border of Russian Federation. This is the current front line in this area. The Ukrainians, if we take a look at the Russian sources map, you're going to see that today we have a lot of updates that Ukrainians managed to develop some front line around Borovaya, a small town they took on the west from Borovaya, Shikivka, this one, and the Ukrainians are moving step by step in direction of Svatova, this town, as we discussed right now. If we are talking about Liman, Tarskoy, Kreminna, about this area, the Russians are preparing another defense line in this area. The Russian sources are saying that Ministry of Defense moved some engineering brigades in this area just with one purpose, to prepare a very nice fortification just to stabilize and stop the Ukrainians, because I believe that I hope that the Russians are not planning to give up to this territory as they did in Liman, Tarskoy, Zarezhne, this bridgehead. If we're talking about the Ukrainians, they understand that it's very highly unlikely they will try to attack Kreminna in front, because between two forests, and if we're talking about this part of the forest, this part is totally mined by the Russians, so it's not very easy to attack in this direction. So the only way how to attack Kreminna is from the north, from small town by the name of Peshchane and Chevronopopovka, these two towns in this area, and from Privolye from the south. And the Ukrainians are trying to develop these two attacks. If we're talking about the north, about this small town Peshchane and Chervonopopovka, as you can see, there is an icon saying that the Ukrainians have already sent there in this direction their commandos and scouts. No tanks, no heavy armored vehicles, just mobile scouts, mobile commandos who are searching, trying to understand the position, trying to find out the best location, trying to understand where's the Russian support roads, support lines. So we can say that they're doing something like recon in combat, but if we're talking about their main forces, they're not moving, they're doing some kind of regrouping and so on. If we're talking about Kupinsk front line, as you can see, the Russians left this territory. They're moving in the direction of Svatova, and I believe that they will leave every single town between Svatova and River Oskol. If we take a look at the Western source map, you're going to see that the Russians now are trying to prepare another front line on another river, on the river Zherebets, this one, that's located between Svatova and Oskol on this line, so they're moving on this position. And as we discussed yesterday, the Russians continue using their Mongolian tactic of warfare. They're not engaging in their close combat, trying to keep and save distance between the Ukrainian mobile forces, Ukrainian armored forces, and their main forces. And every time the Ukrainians gets their position, they're trying to step back. To tell the truth, I don't understand what the Russians are planning to do when they will reach Svatova, because I believe it's not a very good idea to leave Svatova, because Svatova is really the territory of Russian Federation. This town was under Russian under Russian control since the beginning of special operations, so more than half a year. And it will be a very big problem and a very big media loss if the Russians are going to leave Svatove. But we'll see. For now, there are still some territory to retreat, and the Ukrainians are doing regrouping. If we're talking about entire front line, the Russians reported that during the previous 24 hours they attacked 14th Mechanized Brigade near a town by the name of Kupiansk, Dvorechye, these towns, and the Ukrainians, to be more precise, that 14th Mechanized Brigade lost around 140 soldiers and 19 armored vehicles. Also, the Russians finally summarized the Ukrainian losses during the previous 3 days as we call this operation Liman Defense Operation. The Ukrainians on Kupiansk front line between Dvorechye and Kupiansk lost around 500 soldiers and 60 armored vehicles. So as you can see, this is the example of the Mongolian tactical warfare, when the Russians are attacking and trying to destroy the Ukrainian their edge forces with rocket and artilleries, and as soon as the Ukrainians achieve some success by taking some bridgehead, the Russians are stepping back. And if we take a look at this map, you see that they still have a lot of territory to step back, around 200 kilometers. That's a lot, but what are they planning to do with the civilians? I'm not sure. If we're talking about Liman bridgehead, the Russians reported the same, that during the previous 24 hours they attacked the Ukrainian forces in the town in Slaviansk in this area. They attacked the 66th Mechanized Brigade, and as a result of that attack, this brigade lost around 100 soldiers and 8 armored vehicles. The Russians reported that they attacked the Ukrainians' reserves in this area. Also, the Russians summarized the Ukrainian losses during the previous 3 days. Those losses that they haven't reported in the previous days, and the Russians are saying that if we're talking about Liman bridgehead, about this area, the Ukrainian losses are around 900 soldiers. The same thing, Mongolian tactic warfare, where the Russians are attacking and then stepping back. Now let's talk about Artyomovsk, about this town. This is the only area, or Bakhmut, where the Russians are developing their attack, their offensive operation. And yesterday we got first confirmation that the Russians or their scouts entered Opotnaya. Today we got some confirmation that Ukrainians, like few convoys of Ukrainians, were retreating from Veselo Dolina Zaitsev in direction of Artyomovsk. So I believe that if Ukrainians are not planning to move some forces in this direction to stabilize the front line, soon we are going to see the real storm and the town battle inside of Bakhmut. And the Russians reported that during the previous 24 hours they attacked the Ukrainian forces in a small town by the name of Kalinovka. This one, as you can see, this town is located near Chasov Yar. So that was some kind of reserves for Bakhmut and for Charlie Group. And the Ukrainians lost around 260 soldiers and 14 armored vehicles in this area. Another important update are coming from the area between Bilogorovka and Spornaya. This front line has been activated during these days. The Ukrainians trying to accumulate and collect a lot of forces near Bilogorovka, because as we discussed, the only one way how to take control over Kreminna, you need to do this through Privolya, this town. So first you need to take this town or blockade the force in Lysychansk, then you need to cross Seversky Donets River and to cut the supply and connection between Kreminna and Rubizhnoye in small town by the name of Stara Krasnyanka in this area. I hope that we are not planning and are not going to, or maybe soon we will return back our famous Toshkovka in our discussion, but as you can see there is still a distance between Ukrainians and Toshkovka, so maybe soon we are going to discuss Toshkovka one more time. But for now, we are talking about Privilya. So the Russians reported that the Ukrainians managed to collect a lot of forces, and first the Russians are saying that from their sources it was some kind of trap. They allowed them to move further, and after that the Ukrainians appeared or found themselves in some kind of artillery back. The Russians started attacking this area heavily, and the losses of Ukrainians are very high, but for now we don't have any numbers, so I believe that soon we're going to receive something. For this day, we can say, at least for today, the front line has been stabilized a little bit. I'm not saying that the Russians managed to take the situation under their control. I'm just saying that Ukrainians stopped or a little bit slowed down. I believe that maybe sooner or later they will start another stage of their counteroffensive operation, and then we will see something new in this area. If we're talking about the area between Gorlovka and, let's say, Ugledar, there was just one important update that the Ukrainians were trying to attack the Russians in the area of Pervomaisk. They did a small counteroffensive operation, and the Russians reported that during that attack the Ukraine lost around 100 soldiers in this area, and they were defeated and they were forced to step back in this direction. And this about the east side, east front line in this special military operation. Now we are moving to the Kherson district. As you can see, there are a lot of icons, a lot of updates, and the Ukrainians yesterday started counter-offensive operation from two directions. The first direction was in direction of Dnipro in this area. The Ukrainians, as we discussed in the previous videos, were completely defeated on the open field, and many videos ago I told you that the Ukrainians, if we're talking about this front line, if they want to be successful, they have just one tactic to use how to do this: to move along the river, because this is the only one way how they can be on the safe side, if we can talk about any safe side in the current configuration. So the Ukrainians were trying to attack the Russians in Dnipro, and the Russian Ministry of Defense reported that as a result of that attack, the Ukrainians near Dnipro lost around 60 soldiers and 7 armored vehicles. The Russians were attacking the 24th Mechanized Brigade in this area. That we saw videos and some video confirmation of that, so I believe that this information can be real. Another front line where the Ukrainians were trying to test their luck was the area along the Dnipro River, this one. The Ukrainians started their counteroffensive operation yesterday during the day, and as you can see, they managed to achieve significant success. In this front line, they got control over Gavrilovka or Mikhailovka and many other towns, but they stopped near this town by the name of Duchane. The Russians stopped them, and the Russians attacked, and the Ukrainians convoys in this area, and the Russians reported that during that episode of counteroffensive operation, the Ukrainians lost around 130 soldiers and something around 23 armored vehicles. And now we see that situation is a little bit critical for the Russians. If we're talking about their tactics, the Russians used the same Mongolian tactic warfare. That means that they, as soon as they saw the Ukrainians convoys, the Ukrainian armored fist, they dropped their position and stepped back. And as you can see, during the 24 hours, the Ukrainians managed to cross around, let's say, 20-30 kilometers all along the front line. Then they were stopped, and the losses I'm talking about, the most important losses that in this statistic is the armored vehicles, of course. And the Ukrainians lost around 23 armored vehicles. But of course, the Ukrainians managed to achieve some benefits from that attack. And the most important benefit is that, first of all, now the Russians appeared in small back. This is the Russian small back that there appeared as a result of that attack. And of course, the Ukrainians will try to attack and to encircle the Russian forces in this area, trying to create some operational encirclement. But to do this, the Ukrainians need to take control over one important town, Novokamyanka. At least this is the first area they need to take control over. And of course, there is this is it. This is the biggest town in this area, and the Ukrainians need to take this town, and after that they will be able to develop their offensive operation. But this is not the only town that the Ukrainians need to take control over. Of course, the most important town is Dnipro, and as we understand, the Ukrainians did used at least 2 roads of their counteroffensive operation. They were defeated on the Andreevka-Dnipro bridgehead, and they achieved significant success on the line between Novovorontsovka and the small town, this town, Milova or Ducheny, yes, this road. By the way, this town Ducheny is under Russian control, so they control this town, and the Ukrainians were stopped on this area. So now the Ukrainians will try to encircle, but this is not the only benefits that the Ukrainians managed to achieve during this counteroffensive operation. Now the Ukrainians, they have opened or received another opportunities, and the most important opportunities is the Dnipro river. And now the Ukrainians are able to start, as I understand, the thing that they were planning to do this offensive operation. They're able to cross this river using the boats, because and to send their rear guard and to send their commanders and scouts on this side of the river, Dnipro river, and they will try to establish bridgehead on this side of Dnipro river. So this is their main goal. This is exactly what they want. I'm not sure about the Ukrainian capabilities to move the light armored vehicle across the river, but I believe that they have some possibilities to cross the river, not just with infantry, but with some kind of light armored vehicles. And then on this side of the river, they will be able to continue using their tactic of mobile attack, deep front attacks. And of course, the main direction of Ukrainians is to encircle Energodar with the light infantry. And if we're talking Energodar, the Ukrainians, to tell the truth, they don't need tanks to attack Energodar. They don't need artillery to do this. The only thing the Ukrainians need is light infantry. Why is that? Because we understand that if Ukrainians are able to take control over Zaporozhye power plant, I believe that it's impossible or highly unlikely to take this town back, because this area are able to stand against nuclear attack, but not about tanks, Russian tanks, and so on. So of course, now I believe that the Ukrainians will try to cross Dnipro, and they need to do this very fast. And furthermore, they will try to do this not just on this bank. They will try to do this all along the Dnipro river, trying to cross the river, and they need to storm this area with light infantry. And if they do this, we can forget about Energodar and Zaporozhye power plant forever. I mean, the Russians can forget, because to take back this area is highly unlikely. But we'll see. Let's follow. Also, another negative side from this attack is that it's already a rainy weather in this area, and as you can see, the Ukrainians were using the road to attack. And I saw a lot of videos from this area. I believe that now it's still possible to attack along the fields during the day when the sun rises, and with the warm weather, or at least wind or sun, the ground becomes normal for the tanks. But during the night, it was a rainy night, and the Ukrainians couldn't continue their offensive operation in this early morning because of bad ground on the field. So they were expecting sometimes, they would spend some time to wait when the weather becomes better, and after that they were trying to attack using the fields. Also, the Russians are saying that because of rain and wind in this area, they couldn't use their aircrafts in this area. So the Ukrainians were attacked just by the Russian artillery. So a lot of things to understand, a lot of things to combine, and to understand the real picture, what is going to be next in this area. So as we discussed, during the previous 24 hours in this area, the Ukrainians lost around 200 soldiers and around 30 armored vehicles on these two bridgeheads. So the question is, what's next? What's next? Because today, somewhere at 2 p.m. in the Russian parliament, the Russians completed and did every necessary things to liberate and recognize these territories as a part of Russian Federation. So if you remember, on the 30th of September, Putin signed the contracts. During this weekend, the Russian judges, they inspected the contracts and told that everything is fine. And today, the Russian parliament adopted all necessary laws. So as I understand, according to information I have about the Russian legal system and so on, I believe that tomorrow everything should be signed by the head, the first, parliament room or something like this. But I believe that or maybe today or maybe tomorrow in the morning, these territories will completely become a part of Russian Federation, and a lot of rumors, a lot of talks about what's next, what the Russians are planning to do next. Maybe this is the reason why the Russians are retreating along the front line, and it's nothing, and there is nothing common with the Mongolian tactic warfare. Just they're retreating because they're trying to save and keep these forces and soldiers, because they know that on the 5th of October, on the 4th of October, they're planning to make a massive attack and to destroy the Ukrainian facilities. Maybe this is the option, who knows. But anyway, as we can see, the Ukrainians are trying to develop their offensive operation in the north of Kharkiv area, in this area, or the north of LPR area. They're trying to develop their offensive operation in Kherson district. And my question is the next. Are the Ukrainians able these days to start their another counter-offensive operation in Zaporozhye? I believe this is the most important question, and I believe that the Russians are asking themselves this question every single time. Are the Ukrainians planning to do this? Are they able to do this? And to tell the truth, if the Ukrainians are able to do this, I believe that they need to start doing this right now, because that will be a very powerful attack, and I believe that it will be a very big problem for the Russians to stand against this big army with their limited army. As we know, they have right now limited army. And so let's see and we'll follow. Now a little bit about the statistics and one more time about the Mongolian tactic warfare. If we're talking about the Russians, they reported that during the previous 3 days of all battles along the front line in Kherson, Zaporozhye, Donetsk and Lugansk, Oskol front line, the Ukrainian losses were around 4,000 soldiers. That's for 3 days of battle. And if we're talking about the Ukrainians, about their reports, the Ukrainians are saying that the Russians' losses for the same period of time, a little bit less than 1,500 soldiers. So as you can see that during the 3 days, I can't say that we can believe, it's up to you to believe or not, but you see that there is a proportion, and the Russian losses is 2.5 times less than the Ukrainians. So this is the thing that I'm trying to tell you, that the Russians are trying to step back all the time because their army is less than the Ukrainians, and they're trying to attack the Ukrainians with artillery, with aircrafts, and so on. So we'll see, we'll follow the situation, because I believe that this week we are going to receive more updates and more understanding of upcoming situation in Ukraine. And that's it for today. Military Summer channel reminds you condemn any violence in Ukraine. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.